Howdy there, partners. It's me, Aaron. You know, I've been doing this whole YouTubing game for a while now, and sometimes a man just has to escape. Just has to head out there on the open range and just make a life for themselves with their own two hands. But it's hard getting started, so luckily I found a man who was willing to teach me everything that he knew. Dutch?
I know, my brother, but we are safe. We make a bit of money here, then we move again, head out around them, be west of Uncle Sam, in a few months, buy some land.
See, it's wisdom like that. It's gonna turn me into a real cowboy, gonna shape me into the man that I really need to be.
We're trying to reform society to a kinder, truer, better way. Now, of course, there's gonna be casualties.
I didn't quite understand what that part meant, but I'm still with you. I still think that you've got a real...
You ain't thinking big enough, Arthur. You ain't seeing the vastness of our problems and our opportunities.
Well, that part just kind of sounded uncomfortable. Kind of like you meant something completely different by that I should be really concerned about. But you know what? I'm just gonna stick with you up until...
Last thing I want is to get us into trouble, but we need money.
Right, here's the thing. You keep saying we need money, but we've already been going around and doing all these missions, and I've got like $5,000 on me right now, which in 1890 money, that's like a couple million, so shouldn't we be able to like buy our own island by now? And
maybe we can... Freedom for no one in this country no more.
Okay, I'm getting really tired of constantly feeling like my new boss is going to murder me and doing this voice, and I kind of just want to go back to playing video games. So here's our review of Red Dead Redemption 2. I'm going to leave now before he notices I'm not an actual cowboy. Red Dead Redemption 2 is a prequel to the original Red Dead that focuses on the gang of outlaws that John Marston, our protagonist from the first game, used to run around with. But we're not playing as John this time. Instead, we're taking over the role of new gunslinger Arthur Morgan, who can best be described as a man lost, as he and the rest of his crew are searching for a home in a changing world that doesn't need cowboys anymore, as the Wild West is entering its final days. You can also describe him as the dark gritty reboot of Yosemite Sam.
Those men back there, why did they take you?
Geld. Money. Meiner Familie gehört eine Goldmine. Sie wollen Lösegeld erpressen.
How did someone even come up with them words?
Sie bringen mich zu meiner Familie? Vielen Dank. Wie haben Sie sie gefunden?
Look, I'm sorry, friend, I can barely speak English.
The story largely consists of you and your crew traveling around the country as you try to pull off one last big score so that you can escape this life once and for all. But slowly this turns into the video game equivalent of digging your own grave. Actually, I guess Graveyard Keeper is the video game equivalent of digging your own grave, but what I mean is that with each new location that this gang comes to, they make one mistake after another that ends up following them. More enemies are created wherever they go, and the walls of this new world are slowly closing in around them, and their family is even decaying from within, as their own boss Dutch is... Okay, I'll be honest with you guys. I never actually played the original Red Dead, so I didn't know what ended up becoming of Dutch when I started playing this. But within 2 sentences of this guy talking, I could tell, oh, he's going to go crazy. Dutch is like having a very charming bear as your leader. He can sweet talk you, but you know by the end of this, he is going to eat someone.
We gotta convince each family that we're on their side, and then we rob them both. Before they figure out it was us that done it, and not the other lot, we'll be long gone. Think of it as payback for my daddy.
Payback? I ain't in the revenge business, Dutch. Least of all for something happened a long time ago.
Well, I guess we all gotta pay for something.
How ominous. And this creates a beautiful tale when you look at the overarching story of the game, and it's loaded with really developed characters who you might hate at first because, I mean, yeah, they are a pack of outlaws after all, especially Micah, but as you go along and you experience this journey alongside them, you really will start to develop feelings for them, and you'll start to care about each and every one of them, except for Micah. And the game does a great job of making each of them feel alive. Every time that you hang out at your camp, you'll see them walking around talking to each other, and it doesn't feel like they're programs with dialogues being activated as you walk into the camp. It feels like each and every one of them is just walking around living their lives. I swear, I didn't hear one line of dialogue in this camp being repeated in my 80 hours of playtime. There's one moment when you're all celebrating at a party, and every single one of them is doing their own thing, and you can just walk around and listen to each of them having their own unique interactions with each other, and it never felt like any of them were just sitting around waiting for me to come up to them to activate their dialogue. It felt like they were just having conversations. It felt like every single person at this camp was doing their own unique thing in a different part of the camp, and I was just among them. And that's in every inch of this game. You walk into town and everyone is doing their own thing. It feels like this is a game that would be impossible to complete for the same reasons why it would be impossible to get to know every person in your home state at the same time, because everyone is just living their own lives constantly. And to my great surprise, even though this is probably the biggest and most detailed open world I've ever seen, I ran into almost zero complications with this world. At one point in a cutscene, someone cocked an invisible gun, and then later on I found a dead body on a beach, and the vulture that was supposed to spawn on top of him eating his remains ended up spawning underneath him, causing the dead body to hover in the air as the vulture just struggled to escape his eternal cage, made up of his own prey in a twisted personal hell where he truly could never fly away, forced to forever look out at the sky that he could no longer become a part of in a Sisyphusian nightmare of, oh hey, he escaped. Good for him. Why are you still hovering? But as I said, I played this thing for roughly 80 hours, and I traveled over one of the largest maps I've ever seen in a game, and that was it. I've seen games not even half this size that crashed constantly or had objects just floating randomly or twitching and flying away, and I found practically none of that here. And this world isn't just filled with regular NPCs here to provide you with voice lines. There are so many side characters with their own quests that range from emotional to flat out bizarre, but in the best way. All these characters have rich personalities and backstories. Heck, there are some short side quest characters who you talk to only twice who actually have deeper backstories than some video game protagonist. And I will admit that it did bug me that some of these side quests decided to pay you an exposure because you got nothing for doing them, but the characters are so good that they still leave you with a lasting impact that will follow you throughout the rest of the game. There was one character I met who ended up giving me something that I used throughout the rest of my time playing, but the story behind him and how I got that item and the emotional connection I had with him and the item itself caused me to actually feel kind of sad every single time that I used it. It truly was one of the highest achievements I've ever experienced in emotional storytelling for this medium. And as for that 80 hours that I put into this game, that is a lowball estimate. I spent weeks on this thing, and yet there's still tons in here that I never found. Not side quests or collectibles that I didn't complete. Side quest I didn't even start because I never stumbled upon the character who would set them in motion. But again, that's what makes these side missions feel even more special. You can just be out there riding along and you happen to stumble across a random person who ends up changing Arthur Morgan's life, making these chance encounters feel all the more special. And those are just the things that this game wants you to find. If I'm being totally honest, my favorite thing in this whole game was all the bizarre secret hidden stuff that was just underneath your nose. The stuff this game doesn't tell you about, but when you stumble upon it, it makes you feel like you stumbled upon an Old West episode of the X-Files. I'll be honest with all of you, I'm not the biggest fan of the Wild West. I don't really care about cowboys or life on the range, but one thing about the Old West that I always loved was how spooky it could be. I mean, the West was an unknown land filled with outlaws. Yeah, there was going to be some psychopaths, monstrous myths, and an element of the unknown that didn't exist in any other time in our history. And boy, howdy does this game embrace this. There are so many hidden storylines that embrace the weirder elements of the Old West, and this became the part of the game that I kept telling myself, okay, just find one more. And then 3 hours later, I was still hunting down brand new secret side missions. And as I said, they're everywhere, and the internet is still uncovering new stuff. This game has been out for a month, and people still haven't discovered everything. I've been addicted to watching videos on the Easter eggs in these games, and every week someone finds something brand new. It's incredible how much is in here. Heck, here's a clip of me on Twitch following a guide to find a secret, only to uncover a completely different secret that I wasn't even looking for. I'm gonna have to figure out something with this. Now, oh my god! That was not the Easter egg that I was looking for. But there's more to this game than just following the adventures of Arthur Morgan and the colorful characters and bizarre secrets that he finds along the way. There is an overwhelming number of activities that you can do in this game. Sometimes to build up a stat, sometimes to earn money, sometimes just for fun. Do you like fishing? You can go fishing. Do you like crafting? Build yourself a fire and start crafting. Do you like mini games? You've got poker, dominoes, blackjack, and five-finger fillet. If you don't know what that last one is, then good. And do you like collectibles? Oh man, are you in the promised land, my friends? We've got dinosaur bones, dream catchers, buried treasure, trading cards, wall carvings, and probably a ton of other ones that I never even stumbled upon because the world was just that big. In fact, this world is so big that people are just coming out of the woods randomly giving you stuff to do. And if you ever get bored, well, then you can just rob a train or a stagecoach or go bounty hunting or track down animals to get the perfect pelts, to get special outfits, and just look around and find landmarks that you can sketch in your journal. And the amount of care that went into crafting all of this is the new golden standard for going above and beyond the Call of Duty. There are so many details that any other game wouldn't have put time or effort into, and honestly, I wouldn't blame them for ignoring it because the details are so incredibly small, but in this game, they went all in. Like the graphics. Yes, you might look at this and be able to instantly tell how gorgeous these landscapes are, and you'd be right, this is indeed one of the most beautiful games I've ever had the pleasure of exploring. But what you can't tell from just a glimpse is how many tiny details they programmed in here. For example, if you walk your horse through the snow, not only does it leave prints that actually looks like it's kicking snow up in just the right amount of fluffy powder dust in the air, but if you then come back later, those prints are still there. Any other game would have had these prints disappear after a couple of seconds. I don't know how long these prints last, but I tested it and they last a long time. That is impressive how long they had to program this thing to remember where your horse stepped. Or if you decide to kill and skin an animal and then you leave the animal's body out there in the sun, their body doesn't fade away like in any other game, it actually remains there. And it then proceeds to rot and attract vultures. Okay, again, that's not exactly a fun thing to add into your game, but this game is striving for reality, and this is such a wild small detail to add in there that nobody would think of, but it does make it feel more realistic. And speaking of skinning those animals, if you want to get the perfect quality pelt for crafting and selling, you'll have to use the specific weapon that each animal requires and hit them in the exact spot that each animal has programmed into them in order to get you a clean shot, so that way you won't end up damaging the pelt. Don't think that sounds like anything worth mentioning? How about if I told you that there were almost 200 different types of animals in this game, and they had to think about these elements for each of them? And the sound design is jaw-dropping. The little sounds of nature are so subtle, but create such atmosphere. When you have to move a cart full of valuables, you can hear each and every one of them clinking together with the slightest jerk of your reins, making you afraid that if you go too fast, you are going to end up breaking your precious cargo. But that and everything else that I mentioned pales in comparison to the greatest example of going above and beyond that I've ever seen in a game. Now, this is a teeny, tiny, super small spoiler, will not affect the plot at all, but for anyone who wants to be totally surprised in this game, then jump to the time down below. I won't even put any footage in here of it, but there comes a moment in this game where you will end up taking control of a character other than Arthur Morgan. Just for a bit, many games have those levels where you play as another character and all you can really do with them is just complete that character's mission. Just go from the start to the end of that chapter. But in this game, when you take control of this other character, you know what you can do with them? Everything. Everything? Everything! As long as it's not a story mission directly related to Arthur Morgan, you can do it with this other character. All that stuff I just mentioned, collecting special pelts, bounty hunting, robbing people, helping random NPCs that come out of the woods, hunting down crazy Easter eggs. You can do all of that as this other character. I'm not making this up. You can actually start and fully carry out any of the dozens of side missions in this game as this other character. And it's not like when the cutscene starts, Arthur Morgan just slides back into place, or the secondary character just doesn't say anything, or they just say the exact lines that Arthur would say. No, everything is still fully voice acted, and this new character will acknowledge, yeah, I'm here now, Arthur's not here for this mission, and they'll have lines specific to them as opposed to Arthur's lines, and the characters in these side missions will acknowledge their unique dialogue. They will end up saying things like, hey, where's the other guy that we were going to work with? That means that as huge as this world is, as enormous and realistic and detailed as it all is, they still went back and re-recorded everything outside of the main storyline twice, so that you could then decide to do it with this other character if you wanted to, and it's all just for this tiny little sliver of the game. All of this and so much more about this game made it one of the richest, deepest, lively gameplay experiences that I have ever not really had any fun with. At first, I didn't really have any fun playing this game at first. As the game went along, I did end up loving it. However, there are some things at the beginning of this game that were kind of a problem for me, and many of them even stuck with this game throughout the entire length of it, so I do need to address them. But everybody chill the fudge out. I'm gonna go back to saying nice things about it in just a second. Yes, the start of this game is slow, and there are many great games out there that suffer from that, but you can overlook it. But that's because most other games with slow beginnings get past that after 2, 3, 5 hours tops. This game didn't pick up for me until about 20 hours in, and if I'm being totally honest, yes, I did love this game after I got past that, but if I was just playing this casually, if I didn't have to play this for this review, I would have stopped playing about 10 hours in. And even when I was loving it, I still had some problems. I know that everyone out there is already calling this game of the year and it's got nearly perfect scores all across the board, but there are certain decisions that they made in this game that just didn't work for me. However, I will say, this is not me running around with a tinfoil hat on and a wake up sheeple sign screaming, "Why don't any of you see the truth?" No, you see, even though I have problems with this game, I want to put a big ol' asterisk up here that says, for every single problem I had in this game, I understood why someone else would enjoy it and view it as a positive. But even though I understand why other people enjoyed certain elements of this game, there's some stuff I gotta get off my chest. As I said, they wanted to make this world feel as real to the Old West as possible. I've heard some people even describe this as a Wild West simulator, and I agree, that description is perfect. However, real talk, the Old West was boring. This game starts off with a long series of missions that are meant to introduce you to the world and everything that you can do in it, but that's going to be easily the first 10 hours of this game. And even when you finally get past that introduction, there's still a long stretch right after that of just go here and get this, go there and do that, take this person to that place. And that wouldn't be so bad if you could fast travel. But this game doesn't want you to fast travel. Don't get me wrong, it is available. But the way that fast travel works in this game is perplexing. If you upgrade your camp enough, then you get the ability to fast travel from your camp to towns. And in towns, you can go to a stagecoach and fast travel to another town that you've already visited. But if you need to go somewhere outside of a town, even if you've been there a dozen times, you still have to ride there. And you can't use the stagecoaches to travel between towns if you have a bounty on your head. And the story is constantly forcing you to get a bounty on your head. And there is no way at all of fast traveling back to your camp. Guess where about 50% of your missions are going to start? Back at your camp. So a huge chunk of this game is just going to be you riding your horse, riding to the camp to start a mission, riding from the camp to a mission, riding back to the camp after you complete a mission, riding to town to get a bounty, then riding into the woods to find the bounty, then riding your bounty back. But then you can't ride to the next town because you yourself have a bounty. So now you have to ride to the next town over so that you can then pay off your bounty. I assure you, I am not exaggerating this. If anything, I'm downplaying it. And again, I get it. I get why they wanted to do this. They wanted you to explore the world, to find all the crazy side quests, hunt all the various animals, or sometimes just take in the environment. They spent countless hours making this world look good. They want you to sit there and soak it all in. And again, they wanted this to feel real. They wanted this to feel like, hey, you're a cowboy. This is what it was like being a cowboy. It was a whole lot of traveling around on your horse. And if you want that, if that's what you're looking for, I totally understand why this would be perfect in your book. But this honestly drove me nuts. I kept trying to race through all this horse riding as fast as I possibly could, and seeing everyone out there applaud this mechanic in the game made me feel like Elaine in that episode of Seinfeld where everyone kept raving about the English patient.
Elaine, I hope you're watching the clothes because I can't take my eyes off the passion.
No, I can't do this anymore. I can't. It's too long. Quit telling your stupid story about the stupid desert and just die already. Die!
Seinfeld and the English patient. I'm really hitting all the references that my target demographic are going to understand. And again, this wasn't something just here or there. This is a massive chunk of the game. The worst example I can think of is that for one mission, I had to steal a stagecoach and ride off with it. Then, after riding off with it, I noticed my horse didn't follow me, which meant I had to walk halfway across the state on foot to get back to my horse. This took me 15 minutes of just walking. Not walking and completing quests, not leveling up by gaining experience points as I walked, not fighting off bears or bounty hunters as I walked. Nope, just 15 minutes of solid walking action. And sometimes it wouldn't be so bad. For example, when you're riding off on a mission with your gang, it gives you a good opportunity to talk with them and get to know them a little more. But after about 40 or 50 hours, I was pretty good. I didn't really need to get even further into the backstory of these characters. I kind of already knew it, and I really wish we could just fade to black and then poof, we're here at our destination. And before anyone tells me, oh, but you can make it easier on yourself by riding in cinematic mode. No, you can't. Cinematic mode is when you set a destination marker on your map and then you hammer down on the run button a few times and Arthur will ride to the next destination by himself. Unless, of course, you're riding as part of a mission or following someone else, then you have to stay there holding down the X button the entire time. How exactly is that different from just normal riding at that point? Why make a mechanic that says, "we'll ride for you," if I still have to hold down the ride button the entire time? And even when it does ride on its own when you're just out there exploring the world, that's not much better. You still have to wait as Arthur travels that distance in real time, meaning you're basically stuck there watching a 5-minute long loading screen. Actually, that's not fair. If it was a 5-minute long loading screen, I could get up, make a sandwich, get a drink, edit a video. But if you take your eyes off Arthur in cinematic mode for too long, you might come back to find he's now being eaten by wolves or he fell off of a cliff. Why give me an autopilot function that basically forces me to just sit there? It doesn't make this game any easier. You know what would have made it easier? A freaking fast travel option! But again, I understand it. It's there to make the game feel realistic, to give you that feeling of living in the Old West. And the realism doesn't stop there, because you'll have to do chores at your camp, restock supplies, even if you never buy anything from your camp. I never used the camp facilities once in this game. I always went into town for all my supplies, but I still had to restock because everyone else in the camp was using them. If you want something that feels real, then congrats. But sometimes it can feel less like a wild adventure and more like pushing your cuticles back. Not exactly fun, but it's something that you gotta do. It's a game all about self-maintenance. This is a game that doesn't want you to run through it. It wants you to mosey along on your way and take your time. And honestly, when I stopped trying to race through it and just started soaking it all in, I enjoyed the game way more. But still, there's some times where the game moseys way too much. Seriously, why is this the max walk speed when I'm in my camp? I'm walking on grass, not quicksand. Am I constantly holding scissors in my hand when I'm at my camp and Dutch is overly protective? Just let me run to my freaking horse! Oh, and by the way, speaking of the missions, why is everything part of the main storyline? I was playing this on Twitch and it was taking us forever to make any progress. I had to ask the chat, is there any way to tell what's a mission for the main storyline and what's a side quest? At which point the chat informed me, oh, all of this is the main mission. You haven't even gotten to the side quest yet. I had assumed I was just doing pointless side quest after pointless side quest because so far in the first 20 hours of this game, many of the quests didn't really seem to have anything to do with the main storyline or seemed important at all. It's just you doing a favor for one person or another in your camp. And again, I understand why they did this, and I understand why it's a good thing. It gives you an attachment to everyone in your camp, it makes you care about them, and it forces you to learn about their past. It also helps you learn about a new town that you've come to, or a new character that you've met, or get inside of Arthur Morgan's mind, and all of that builds up as the story goes along to make certain storylines and plot beats have way bigger impacts on you, and it absolutely succeeds at that. However, I really wish that about 25 to 30% of these main storyline missions were optional side quests instead of mandatory storyline quests, because I still would have done most of them. I love me a good side quest, I love character exploration, but there would always come that point where I said, okay, seriously, I'm done wrangling sheep, just let me move this story forward. And it's not even like all the character exploration missions are at the beginning of this game, then when the story really kicks into high gear, we're focused entirely on that. No, even halfway through this game, we were still just stopping the main storyline just to do a random mission that had to do with this one specific character that never really led to anything else other than making me go, oh, well, I guess I now know this character more. Kind of wish I could just continue this whole thing about whether or not the camp is going to fall apart and whether or not we're all going to jail. That seems way more interesting at this point. I'm just saying, by the time I get to 30 hours into the game, shouldn't I already have a good idea of who everyone in my camp is? I really do not want to use this word, but it feels to me like this game has so much needless padding in it. It feels like with the storyline, they tried to stretch it out as much as possible when it would have worked so much better if they had kept it tighter and more focused. The best example I can think of is that at the end of one of the chapters, I found myself saying, oh man, this is what everything was leading up to. This is the all is lost moment. This is when everything we've built up is going to crumble down around our heroes. And then the next chapter is something completely different. Like, it doesn't even feel like I'm in the same game. It feels like a whole chapter of this game was just them saying, oh, we're not done yet, when all I could think was, yeah, you kind of are. Now, so far I've either been applauding or finger wagging the structure of the game, how much content it gave us, how that content is presented to us, but what about the actual gameplay? A car can have all the bells and whistles at once and look amazing, but if it doesn't handle well, then what's the point? And Red Dead Redemption 2 handles fine, I guess. I mean, it's not bad. It's okay. I mean, it's weird, but still doable. I mean, it's fine. It's fine. Not exactly my most eloquent moment, I'll admit, but I'll go into more details. For example, aiming your gun is very slow, which can make firefights seem unfair, but once you finally realize if you stop aiming in between every shot, then when you pull the gun back out, it will auto-lock on an enemy. However, it would never lock onto a deadly spot. It would always lock onto a spot that would just injure them, so you would still have to manually adjust even after you auto-lock. After I really learned how to do this, then I became great with the gun. I was taking people down with one single shot every single time, just one kill after another, but it still always felt odd having to stop aiming, start aiming again, point the gun slightly up to get to just the right spot every single time. Or just walking. The simplest thing that you could do in any video game. Even that feels just a tad wonky. Arthur always feels like he's going one step further than I want him to, like he's running on ice. Or sometimes it feels like I was walking up against an invisible wall that was trying to force me in one direction or another. And at first, I thought it was just a bug in my game. I thought that might have just been me. But I looked around and lots of other players are complaining about the exact same thing, about how it always feels like the game is trying to steer you in a certain direction. But it's not game-breaking, it's not pull your hair out frustrating, it's just kind of, that feels a bit weird. Kind of like when you sleep wrong and then when you wake up you've got a knot in your back. It's not comfortable, but you'll survive, you'll be fine. However, there are a few other things in the gameplay that just doesn't make any sense to me. No, not the fast travel thing, I've complained about that more than enough by now. Although, speaking of things that makes this game take longer, why is the search mechanic so slow? Why can't I just click search and then a list of what's in a trunk or in a drawer comes up and I can select from it? Why do I have to hold down on the search button, wait for the search bar to fill up, go through the opening of the drawer animation, then look through each item in the drawer manually, deciding whether or not I want it. Then when I decide to pick it up, I have to go through the picking up animation and the looking at it animation. Then if I'm looking through something that has multiple different shelves or drawers in it, then I have to open up every single one of them individually and do this all over again. Yes, it's more realistic, but to all the people out there who wanted this game to feel more realistic, did you actually care about this? Was the really slow search mechanic something that you were going to be a stickler about? Was it something that really ended up adding a lot to your gameplay experience in the end? Because for me, it always brought the game to a grinding halt. In fact, it kind of ended up discouraging me from searching around in a game that wants you to search around. This is a game that wants to reward you for looking in every single nook and cranny of this world, yet it takes so long to search in a place that if you're in the middle of an action sequence, like someone is firing at you or you're being attacked by animals, yeah, if you decide that you want to look in a drawer real quick, you might as well just surrender because you're as good as dead. But again, I understand that people are going to enjoy the realism of it. And I will admit there are several other small complaints that I have about the gameplay here and there, but most of them are just kind of nitpicks that don't really matter and can be easily overlooked. However, the one thing I cannot forgive, the hill I will die on in this review. Why is the say hello button and the aim your gun at a person button the same button? Doesn't that kind of feel like if the Center for Disease Control decided to change this symbol to this symbol? Doesn't it feel like just eventually that's going to lead to one really unfortunate mix-up? There were many times in which I went out riding and I zoned out after about 5 minutes. I forgot that I had my gun equipped. So a simple, hi, how you doing, quickly turned into a, this is a stick-up. So gameplay has its own sets of pros and cons, and the start of the game is, well, I don't want to call it a slog, but I sure am thinking it pretty hard. But even through all that, I still love these characters and this story. In fact, I'll gladly go ahead and say Red Dead 2 has the best ensemble cast of any game this year. And a lot of that is thanks to the writing. This is a Rockstar game after all, and Rockstar's writers have the special ability to craft dialogue that is both grisly and charismatic at the same time.
Let me roll. You boys are too old for real labor no more.
You're too dumb for anything else.
You're still too quick for me, old man.
Enjoy picking on children.
And then they always manage to find just the right people to deliver every single one of these lines. This collection of actors gave each of these characters so much depth. As I said, Dutch is amazing because he constantly sounds like he's about to go crazy and snap your neck, but he still sounds like he loves you at the same time. And Benjamin Byron Davis was able to capture that in this character in a way that's comparable to Marlon Brando. It's that damn good.
The promise of this great nation. Man created equal. Liberty and justice for all. That might be nonsense too, but it's worth trying for. It is worth believing in. Can't you see that, friend?
You see, Dutch, it's stuff like that why we have trust issues. I mean, on paper, every word you said sounds fine, but, you just delivered it in a way that makes me think you're going to snap my neck when I'm not looking. Is he behind me right now? And as I said, this game is going to force you to bond with these characters. There was a moment when one member of my gang got in trouble and you had to go and rescue them, and hey man, I was ready to saddle up and ride to save them in real life, because after 40 hours of playing this game, I wasn't about to let anyone mess with my gang. And not to spoil anything, but you better believe not everyone is making it through this. And when a character died, it hurt, because despite my complaints about how many missions they force you to go on that didn't feel important at all, they did give me an attachment to these characters that ended up breaking my heart down the road. But of course, what ties all these characters together is our protagonist, Arthur Morgan. Someone who is the walking, talking embodiment of all the positives I have about this game. Yes, he's an outlaw, and technically he is a bad guy, but he has so much heart to him. He is constantly walking back and forth between light and dark as he has to make difficult choices as he faces the inevitability that his time in this world is done. The age of cowboys is coming to an end. But after spending his entire life in this gang, it's not like he can lead a normal life. It's not like he gets to ride off into the sunset and live happily ever after, and he knows this. And watching that weigh on him as he desperately tries to change whatever he can to make things better for the people that he cares about is heartbreaking, but you cheer him on at the same time. You want to see everything work out for him. You want to see him finally get the good ending that he so deserves. But this entire story is built up to make you doubt if that's ever possible. In fact, Arthur Morgan's quest to choose his own fate, to be a hero or a villain, is part of this game, as you're given a morality meter that goes up and down depending on what good or bad choices you've made. And at first, I kinda hated this thing because I wanted to play as a good guy. But the game kept forcing me to do bad things. No matter what I tried to do, I'd then have to go on a mission that would force me to commit terrible deeds and would then raise my bounty and drop my morality meter. Micah, I swear to God, every single person here hates you. No one likes you in this game. Go and suck on a horseshoe, you walking human fist of thumbtacks. But eventually I realized that's the point. That's exactly what Arthur Morgan is going through. He wants to be good. He didn't join this gang so that he could get rich and just rob people. He joined this gang because their motto was that they helped those who needed helping and they fed those that needed feeding. But as Dutch goes down this darker path, Arthur doesn't have a choice and he's forced to sink down with them even when he knows it's wrong. And guess what? That's exactly what this morality meter does for you. You don't want to do this awful mission. It'll screw up all the good you've been trying to do. Which is probably exactly what Arthur Morgan is thinking at that exact moment. When I realized that's what the point of the morality meter was, I wanted to drop the controller so I could have both hands free to applaud Rockstar, because damn if that isn't a brilliant mechanic. And if you are able to max out the kindness side of your morality meter, it pays off. I thought all it would do is simply affect how people talk to you in town or how much items are sold for, but it does so much more. I had special interactions with side quest characters that were affected by just the morality meter, and some of them ended up coming back around to be really touching moments that nearly moved me to tears. Again, this game gets so good that it got that reaction from me from an optional interaction from a side quest character. And of course, talking about the main story itself, yes, as I said, it started off super slow, but it built up to a point where I couldn't turn the game off because I had to know what happened next. It delivered to me epic set pieces and great character moments that will stick with me for years to come, and it all led up to an ending that left me emotionally fulfilled in a way that few games ever have. The end of this storyline is absolutely beautiful. It feels like you have truly seen the end of a journey that you will never forget. Then the game keeps going for 7 more hours. Yeah, we can't not talk about that! The epilogue to this game is the new reigning champ in Overstaying Your Welcome. Lord of the Rings Return of the King has nothing on the end of this game. Now, I will not say what the epilogue is. I'm not going to spoil anything. I'm not even going to show any footage of it, so you're all fine. But I will come in here and let you know the point of the epilogue is to tie this game directly into the first one. It is to show you everything that led directly up to the start of the first game. And you know what? On some level, I totally applaud that. I'm right there with you. There is one final storyline that needs to be wrapped up at the end of the main storyline. So, okay, you need to do that in the epilogue. And it does provide a little bit more emotional background to that first game that will give that game an even bigger impact. That's great. All those things I just described can be crammed into maybe an hour. And this took me 7 hours. And I will admit, other people out there online have said it only took them 4 hours. That's still way too darn long for an epilogue. This thing drags on, and it just takes all the impact out of the ending to the main storyline. There is actually a moment in the epilogue where they reference what happens at the end of the main storyline, and I actually found myself saying, oh dear God, I forgot that even happened. Remember how I just went into all that detail about the big emotional impact that the ending of the main storyline had on me? This epilogue goes on for so long, I forgot it existed. Like it was something from a different game that happened years ago. And if your epilogue makes you forget The main storyline? That's not good. And I know, there are a lot of people out there who were huge fans of the first game, and they're going to say, well, I really do want to know everything that led up to that first game. Trust me when I tell you, you don't want to know everything that led up to that first game. You want the big moments. You want the important stuff. You don't want the everyday mundane tasks that had to be accomplished by these characters as they were just living their lives. Remember how I said that this game started kind of slow and with a whole bunch of just moseying around, going and doing this thing over here, then going and retrieving that thing over there, one mission like that after another. Then the game became magical, one of the best things I've played all year. Yeah, this epilogue is just the first part of this game all over again, but even slower. It almost felt like I was being held hostage here because I wanted to go out. The game was done. It gave me that perfect ending, but this thing went on for so long, I honestly thought that the game was going to download the first Red Dead onto my PlayStation and force me to play through that before I could finally get the ending credits, before I could finally get the big, congratulations, the end, it's all wrapped up, you can go now. This game just kept going, and honestly, I would applaud this epilogue if they could just take that hour of really important stuff and make that the epilogue. And then, for everybody else out there who really did want to know the day-to-day life of these characters that led up to the first game, just make that a side story thing that pops up on the main menu after you complete the whole game. So if you really want to play through that, you have the option of doing that as a side thing. But it is not a side thing. It's part of the main storyline. So I am judging it as part of the main storyline. And as part of the main storyline, oh my god, this needed to end now. And again, I get that the opening and closing of this game are meant to feel realistic, and they do that wonderfully. But I've always lived by one rule when it comes to features in a game, or how you choose to tell your story in a game. No matter what positives it provides, no matter what the reasoning behind all of it is, or what accomplishment it achieves, end of the day, I have to ask, does it make the game fun? And while I understand why many people would enjoy the things I have problems with in here, when it comes to the beginning and the ending, my answer to that question is no, it didn't. The best way to sum up my pros and cons with this game come down to one scene in particular, where Arthur goes to a show with someone, and you'll spend that time there occasionally leaning over and talking to your friend, and it's actually really charming. It makes you care about their relationship, and it feels totally immersive. It makes you feel like you're right there with them. But at the same time, you do actually have to sit there throughout the entire length of this show as it plays out in real time. And I'll be honest with you, after 2 minutes, all the charm was kind of lost on me and I had my phone out checking Twitter. So in the end, this game has amazing acting, writing, characters, and a wealth of gameplay that will keep you entertained for days. However, there's a lot they put in here to try and make the game feel more realistic, or to try and force you to bond with your fellow gang members, or to explore the world. And I understand why that's a good thing and why so many people will love it, but for me, yeah, I can't lie, this game was rough to get through at times. Red Dead Redemption 2 feels like the video game equivalent of one of those Oscar-winning movies that are beautiful and touching, but it has some decisions that just seem bizarre, and when you bring that up, people tend to say, oh, you don't understand, it's all about X, Y, and Z. But honestly, I do get it. I do understand why people would applaud some of the decisions that went into the making of this game and why those decisions are perfect for them. But for me, they just didn't always work. But there did come that point where this did become perfect for me, where the story kicked in and the side quests were amazing and I fully understood all the characters and I could explore the world as much as I wanted to, and I kept thinking about all the problems I had at the beginning of this game, and I kept asking myself, can I really ignore all those problems? Because this part of the game, this 30 to 40 hours of the game right here in the middle, is so incredibly good that I don't even want to think about those problems. They're not bothering me anymore. Could I possibly give this game a perfect score? But then the epilogue kicked in, and that epilogue came in right after the perfect moment to go out, and for every hour that epilogue went on, my score dropped more and more because it just kept reminding me of all the stuff that I didn't like about this game. So, in the end, this game was so close to a perfect, but then it totally did not stick the landing, and I gotta be honest with you, it dropped me all the way down to an 8.5 out of 10. Which, I would like to remind everyone, is still a very high score. You're all still going to leave very mean comments down below, aren't you? That's fair, I understand, I had that coming. Let me know what you thought about Red Dead in the comments down below, or on Twitter and Twitch at Professor Thorgi. And if you like this video, then hit that subscribe button and ring that bell so that you can see all of our videos, and feel free to share this around the web. It's the best way to help this channel grow. And if you want more Red Dead from us, we are going to have a spoiler talk coming up in which I go into more details about my thoughts about this story, and especially about how it all ended. So again, if you want to see that, make sure that you are subscribed. Thanks for tuning in, everyone. Come back next time.